Hi, welcome to another episode of Pitch. I'm Leah St. Marie,
And I'm Angel.
and today we have a very special guest that we both know, a Native American emerging filmmaker, Eagle Smith. Welcome, Eagle.
Hi, thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks. Coming at us from, are you in Washington State?
Yeah, I'm in Tacoma, Washington.
Nice. Is it beautiful there right now?
Oh, it's absolutely gorgeous. I'm personally partial to the rain. I wish it would rain a little bit more right now, but yeah.
Same.
But it's sunshiny and rainbows, and our parents just put up the pool. So that's one thing that we've got going on today is we're going to jump in the pool later.
Oh,
So,
fun.
permanent invite for Angel and I to come look at
Yeah,
some rainbows and swim, right?
hop on over.
Now, are you from the Tacoma, Washington area originally, or what's your like background a little bit?
Well, I'm actually from a small fishing village in Alaska called Metlakatla.
Okay.
And that's where I spent the first part of my childhood and then the rest of my summers until I was 18. But I grew up in the Federal Way area, which is where I went to high school. And in high school, I was part of a television production program called TJTV.
I read about this because you sent me your bio, and then I was like doing some investigative stuff online about you. And I just want our audience to hear this number. How many short films did you do?
I made over 60 shorts in 2 years.
Through this program?
Through this program, a lot of it was once I had the camera in hand and access to an editing software, you couldn't stop me. I was just making stuff just to make stuff. I would say like maybe 15 videos out of the 60 that I made got used, but I was just out there filming, making little music videos, making little shorts, making like whatever I could think of. I was just making what I could think to make. And it's funny because we just had a high school reunion and none of my videos made it to any of these people's like personal saved portfolios, but they posted in our group some of the old TJTV videos, and it brought me back to those days of walking around campus, filming things, and putting stuff to music.
What do you think doing so many short films so young did for your filmmaking education?
You know, it really made me learn to work with what you have. So I guess coming out of that, we're in pre-production for a feature right now. And I'm really glad to have someone else on board who also wants to work with just what we have because we just want to get something made and we want to do a good job with it. But we're fans of you have what you have in front of you, and that's it. You got to make it work. So I think that it gave me the kind of gumption to say, I'm the short film that I made, I had a budget of $216. And I made that short film on a broken iPhone. I shot it and edited on a broken iPhone, and it actually turned out really good, except for one issue, which is with the sound for like part of the clip. And my partner is working on editing that. But like we ended up getting a great short film out of that just because of ire and gumption and saying, okay, this is what I have. It's going to take me this much time. That's fine.
That's really inspiring. It reminds me of I was watching a Jodie Foster masterclass video, and she said, "Now is always the right time to be a director." And I think it hit me because she's a queer female director, and everybody else my whole life have been saying like, "Now is always the right time. Just go and do it." But it took her to say it in that class. Um, Transitioning, I want to say I was looking at your different Twitter posts, and one of the ones that hit me real strong was you're talking about Hollywood's fantasy of natives and
Oh,
how
yeah.
you're advocating. So, do you want to talk a little bit about what that means to you and how you're advocating against it?
Yeah. I first want to say before I get into it that I'm really happy with seeing Native Americans have more opportunity. For the 100+ years of Hollywood, we've kind of just been off to the side and forgotten about. And even in regular daily life, I've had people tell me literally, oh, I forgot Native Americans exist. So to have, yeah, I know.
No, people have actually said that
What?
to you.
People, I've had more than one person say this to me. I've had at least 6 or 7 people say this to me. And a lot of it is because I'm so ethnically ambiguous, and like most people's first thought is either Filipino or Mexican. And to which I say, hey, thanks for the compliment. But no, I'm Alaskan Native. And then like at least 6 or 7 people have literally said that to me. So we're still here, and I'm loving seeing things like Reservation Dogs. Rutherford Falls, unfortunately, just got canceled, but Rutherford Falls was such a good show. And, you know, Killers of the Flower Moon is like a big movie Martin Scorsese just made that debuted at Cannes.
Right.
So I'm happy to see these things. But when it comes to casting, we have issues like Kelsey S. Beale, who was cast in Yellowstone to play a major Native American character, and she's Cambodian and British. And she gets this role, which, you know, I don't have a problem. It's not actually, I do have a problem with casting non-natives as native, but my bigger problem is with lying about your race to take a native role. But she's such a beautiful girl, you see. And she looks like what some non-native wants to fetishize a Native American woman to look like. And that's one of the reasons why she gets this role. So we run into women are placed on this, if you don't look like a fetish, then you're not going to get cast. And men are placed in this, you can, just like men across the industry for any race, you can look like whatever, but you're going to be the sidekick to the white savior. And it's all a fantasy. Native Americans, except for Reservation Dogs right now, and I haven't seen, of course, Killers of the Flower Moon. I have high hopes for this feature. Except for Reservation Dogs, Native Americans are being put up. You can only play this if you play into the fantasy that non-natives are creating for their projects. Instead of casting us as we are, if you go to a reservation, Native American women are all shapes and sizes. And guess what? I clean up. I can get phone numbers all day long. When you go to the res, like, I'm not a thin woman, but I'm a beautiful woman to somebody. And Native women look like me, you know? So and like on a personal level, it sucks to miss out on so much opportunity because I don't look like the non-natives version of a Native American. They have it in their head. This is what natives look like. This is what natives sound like. This is what natives do. But there are 574 tribes, and the culture in Native America is just vastly different than the culture that's been perpetuated by non-native media. So, yeah.
And I have, bumping up against that is also money, as it always is. Like, if you want representation, it is difficult because you're coming across fellowships that only take place in LA, contests that cost you at least $100 to enter, and then flying to a festival. All of that is money. And you're asking, like, well, why aren't there more Indigenous people being represented? Well, you're making it harder for us, or, you know, for you, right? You're making it harder for a certain class of people to be able to break into the industry because you're putting up door after door after door.
The biggest door that we run into is there's quote unquote no demographic for natives. But my counter argument to that is actually, if you think about it, Native American is probably the biggest demographic. How many people I've met in my life have told me, oh, my grandmother is Native American, my great-grandmother is Native American, my great-great-grandfather is Native American. The history of this country is just such that so many people you run into on a daily basis are part Native American. So to say that there's no demographic for natives, actually, there's a reason that a show like Reservation Dogs is so successful and just got their primetime slot, is because people are honestly interested in that part of their heritage, as small as it may be to them. That's something interesting to them. That's something they can explore and live in.
How can non-native filmmakers make sure, if they want to include native characters in their stories or tell stories concerning native or indigenous people, that they're honoring the various tribes while also staying beholden to the part of the audience in America that isn't native necessarily? What's the like solution? Because Martin Scorsese, I don't know his complete genealogy, but he's got this film coming out and there's been a lot of like positive buzz about it. So I just want to see, in your opinion, how do people who are like non-native handle this? Is it consulting? Is it bringing people on board who are in the community?
Yeah, that's part of it. So one thing that Martin Scorsese did right was he had two consultants from the Osage tribe, and they worked with the Osage people throughout the process from pre-production to the finishing touches. So the Osage people were a major part of this process. Even though the main characters that were cast were not Osage, which in personal opinion, I think would have been the most ideal situation, but that's another brick wall I don't want natives to face. So it would have been ideal to have Osage people play Osage characters. At the same time, opportunity is so limited for Native Americans that we're just not there yet to exclude people from another tribe just because they're not part of the tribe being depicted. Which is unfortunately some of the process that is happening on other projects I'm not going to name because I'm not trying to, cast a yuck on other people's yum. Uh, so consulting is part of it. The other part is to actually visit the tribe that you're depicting. There's a third part to this, and I'll get to that in just a moment, but visit the tribe, go to that community, take off the lens of the white patriarchal version of what you want Native Americans to look like, and go to the tribe and see what those people look like. See what those people sound like. See what those people practice in their daily traditions and cultures. And it doesn't have to just be on the res. City natives make up 75% of the Native American population. So don't exclude the people who are off of the reservation and still like live in mainstream culture with their roots attached to them. And then the third part is stop excluding tribes. If you're going to focus on a Native American content, think outside of the box and depict a tribe that hasn't been featured yet. My tribe has never ever, people don't even hear of Tsimshian. They hear of Tlingit, which got one small mention in the movie The Proposal. Betty White played a quarter native Tlingit, which if there was going to be a non-native, I'm all for Betty White. She can play non-native. It's okay. But think outside of the box and depict a tribe that doesn't get any traction, because we're with our voices, as you mentioned earlier, Leah, it's hard breaking in this industry for anybody. But for natives, it's definitely, we face brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. And to alleviate some of those brick walls is to give acknowledgement to the fact that there's more than just 7 or 8 tribes. So those are my 3 points. Is like Martin Scorsese did it right with Killers of the Flower Moon. Go visit the culture that you're depicting and think outside of the box with the cultures that you want to represent.
Going back to something you said earlier about doing these 60 shorts, right, as a part of this program. Now you're prepping for feature film.
Yeah.
And I come from the school of you've got to make do with what you've got and get the story told, right? I'm with you on that. However, for feature, you have to scale up somewhat to make sure that you can get through what is a marathon compared to a sprint and doing a short.
Mhm.
How are you finding, if you're experiencing this, how are you finding having to manage more of a budget and having to manage more moving parts from the mindset of like, well, we're just going to make do with what we've got. We can just go shoot this thing, to like, no, now we've got to like actually use the resources that we do have, which are considerably more than what we've ever had, to get this feature completed.
Can you rephrase that question a little bit for me so I can answer it better?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
with you. I'm with you. How are we working with our budget? Is that what you mean?
How are you, someone who's come from like, let's just bootstrap and do it all ourselves, finding the scale difference between making a short, which you can make for $216, but you can't make a feature for 2000, whatever the equivalent multiplier is, right? You got to have considerably more resources. How are you finding dealing with more resources now, even though it's still maybe like a limited amount of resources by comparison to some feature budgets?
Okay, yeah. So we set a list of priorities. That's actually part of our meeting today is we're talking about what resources we currently have and what we're going to do to get more resources. That's literally right after this. I'm going into a meeting for that. But to answer your question, we made a list of priorities, things that like no matter what we have, this comes first. We pay for this and everything else we have to find a way to make it work. So for us, the number one on our list is having a good cinematographer. Number two on the list is having a good editor. And number three is marketing. So those three things, no matter what we do, no matter what else comes, those are top of our list in priority. And if we have to work everything else for free or for favors, then we're going to do that. But it's setting a list of priorities of what is the most important to us.
That's great. That's really smart.
Thank you.
What is your feature film about? Because I saw that you announced that you're in pre-production as of 3 days ago.
Yeah, it's
Congrats.
about, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the quick pitch?
The quick pitch is two rival Native American ghost hunters hunt a ghost on a white burial ground.
I love this.
So we're taking the narrative, this old school narrative of like all these horrors that are shot on Native American burial grounds.
Yes.
We're turning it on its head.
Yes.
That's fun. Yeah.
What's I'm sure that you've thought of this, but what's your goal with it?
Well, our main goal after getting it made is to get it leased. We've talked about the difference between selling and leasing, and we're not on board to sell a finished product quite yet, but we are on board for leasing until we can build up a following big enough so that when the time comes to sell, we can sell for a better number. Because, we're all relatively no named on this. We may have
Yeah.
done things. I've got like a few acting credits, but that doesn't make me a name.
Yeah.
And the goal is to get the traction, get the movement within Hollywood somehow of building up a following and recognition for this, and then taking it from there.
I almost feel like for our listeners who don't know, maybe we should talk about how all we got connected to you, Eagle.
Yeah, at the Sundance producing collab.
That's right. And you had
Yeah, with Simon Tofik.
yeah. And did the feature script that you're working on now, is that the work that you submitted to get you into that program, or did you have another project that?
The other project that I submitted was actually the short film that I completed last year.
Cool. Congrats on completing the short.
Yeah, that's great.
Now, have you done other Sundance programs, or was that your first and your only one so far?
That is my first and only one so far. Unfortunately, I just don't have the resources to continue. I wanted to do the next level up of how to get funding for your feature.
Yeah, same.
Because yeah, that would be I feel like after doing the producing lab, I'm prepared, but there are still some missing pieces, and that's the big missing pieces. How do you get money?
That's the
That
question on a lot of people's minds.
that's always the question. I want to ask about the producers lab, but I also, for our listeners out there who have the same question, some of the things that we've come across just real quick on how to get money, which is something that Simon mentioned, is he said the difference between the social media platforms is Instagram is to connect filmmakers, Twitter is to market your film, and LinkedIn is where you find your financiers. He said, for whatever reason, that's where they are. And he's had some success in finding them there. But another way is to use your social media platforms and just outright ask people if they want to invest in you because they're looking. I think that there's a film finance website, and I'm going to have to look in on this, of film financiers that are actively looking for projects to fund. But the wall of that is it's controlled by someone, and you have to pay them a fee in order to enter the website and be connected to those people. The other place, and this is just another wall, is go to film festivals.
Mm-hmm.
That's where a lot of, I wouldn't say networking, because networking has kind of a slimy feel to it, but your community, like what you're really looking for is a community of filmmakers or film financiers that are looking for you, that are looking for projects that you have to fund because they want your story to be told because they have some connection to it. So finding that community, film festivals are a really great way to do that. But back to the Sundance producers thing that we all met on, what's something that you took away from that class that you're applying to your work now?
Oh, absolutely the business sides of it. And in a moment, I want to go back to the goal of the movie if I can. But one of the biggest things that I took away is all of the business that goes into making a movie. Like, I've hammered it into my partners that we need to establish an LLC, and little things like that I learned along the way. All of the particular businessy things. Sorry, I don't sound eloquent right now, so for
I
anybody
think
listening.
businessy sounds very elegant. I think so.
Okay, well, thank you. That was my biggest takeaway, was that you have to establish the LLC for your film. And from there were little other factoids like, once your LLC is established, you establish a business bank account, and then you can borrow against your business bank account depending on the owner's credit scores. So that's something that was in the talks for us as far as financing, because we want to do this on our own. If we invite other people into making this movie, they're going to want to do it their way, and we already have goals for the point of the movie, and we don't want someone else putting their hands on it and then saying, well, if we give you this much money, then we have to cast this person.
Yeah.
And that's outside of the goals for us.
Real quick, speaking about business savvy and being businessy, I was watching this video of this guy talking about what rich people do and how rich people borrow money. And what was so fascinating about it, and I never knew this, Angel, I think you already knew this because you're savvy in a lot of different finance ways. But he said, you can borrow against certain life insurance policies, and it is the lowest interest rate out there. So if you have like 100,000 life insurance, you can borrow against it and just slowly repay it back.
Oh, wow.
But it's a certain type of life insurance.
I might do something like that personally.
Yep.
I might do something like that personally. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah. But back to your saying about the goal of the film. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I just realized I answered a question like a producer would answer it in a production meeting, and I didn't answer it like an emerging filmmaker with a purpose. Um, so that being said, our biggest goal is what I had talked about, where Hollywood wants to fantasize Native Americans. Our biggest goal is to take away from that fantasy and say, here we are, this is what we look like, this is what we do, this is what we sound like. And it's not all living on the reservation and doing dances. So part of our main goal is to give opportunity to ourselves who have had very little opportunities and face brick walls on a daily basis, and put ourselves in the roles that we want to play. So like my big thing is I've been acting since 1998, but I've only had 5 Hollywood credits to my name. And that feels, it's not that it's unfair. I understand the business is a competitive one. But when I think of, if somebody's been acting since 1998, they develop a certain level to their skill. And at some point, it should just be a numbers game. And it is for most non-natives. But it's not a numbers game for natives. It's a, how can you play into someone else's fantasy game for natives? It's kind of like fantasy native football almost. So our goal is to break that and see somebody who wants to direct a movie. Somebody who wants to have their movie premiere and get their WGA, what's the word? Get their WGA,
Their
Membership.
card, their union.
Yeah, get to join the union because they had their movie premiere. We want to be able to do that. And we don't want someone to take it from us or amend it in any way.
Those are all really great and worthwhile goals. So hats off to you for keeping it within your goal set and your vision, so it can't be corrupted. So well done.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's you spoke about the fantasy and the representation. And I have a friend of mine who belongs to the Ojibwe tribe, and he said he's so tired of all of the stories of Indigenous people being sad. He's like, there's more to our culture than just being a martyr.
This is why people need to visit a reservation or visit the culture so that they can understand what it is that they're representing. Because if you go to a reservation, people got jokes. We're not a sad people. We're a joking all of the time kind of people. And a lot of the jokes are dirty, but we're mostly comedians by nature, aside from being storytellers. So that plays into one of the goals of our feature, is that it started out as a horror film, but then we couldn't help ourselves. Being native, we had jokes, so it turned into a satire. It's more like Ghostbusters meets We Have a Ghost, which is on Netflix. You should watch We Have a Ghost. It's a really great movie. But yeah, it's more of a satire. And like I said, we just couldn't help ourselves. So we want to take away from this narrative of like trauma, because while trauma is embedded into our roots and our history, we have a more enlightened view on life than what is being depicted in film and television.
When you were working on the script for this feature, did you workshop it? Did you submit it to any place? Did you try to get any funding, or was it just all in-house? It's just us. We're not seeking outside opinion.
We did workshop it a couple of times. We had 2 table reads, and we were open to notes from the table reads. And from the table reads, we did make the script technically better, but the story was still there. We didn't go down certain avenues. Like we didn't submit it to houses for professional input, basically because one of the things that we would run into, and this is my opinion, I don't want to speak for my co-writer, but everybody wants to see natives a certain way because of how they've been conditioned to see natives so far. And we're not doing that. So I don't want to hear from people, oh, it's not native enough. We don't have, this much native culture needs to be depicted for us to know they're native. No, you're missing the point of the feature then. So we focused on in-house, and we did a few table reads where we got great input, and we've so far made the changes based off of that input that, in my opinion, have made the script now ready for production.
Speaking of promoting and marketing and funding, I just realized we're a platform that you can ask people to help fund your feature film. So is there a website link, or do you want to like plug in your email address?
Yeah, keep in touch with me on Twitter. Follow me at Eagle Eye Pizza on Twitter. Um, we're gonna be promoting, once we establish the necessary business parts of it that we need to establish, we're going to start a fundraising campaign to see if we can double the capital that we've already gained. We want to at least double, if not triple, what we've gotten. But yeah, there will be a fundraising campaign. We just have not started it yet. But once we have our ducks in a row, it's going to be on my social media page, and we're going to have a few social media pages for the feature film that will also have a lot of links attached to it.
That's great. How much are you looking to raise?
Well, right now we have 50,000 to start, and we're hoping to have 150,000 for a good cushion and to make sure that we're doing this as right as we can.
Yeah.
But 150,000 is not that much. And I keep telling myself, in an ideal world, we'd have $1 million to $2 million to make this more right.
Yeah.
But working with what you have, we're hoping that if we can get 150,000, we can do this as right as possible and really make something that comes from blood, sweat, and tears, which, maybe we'll be more proud of the work that we get out of that than if we had more money. But we're hoping 150,000 to meet that goal.
The next one, you'll get $1 million.
The next one, we already have an idea for a sequel in mind, just because the story is that much that we believe in it.
And talk about, for our audience that doesn't know how to lease a film, what is that and how do you go about doing that?
As far as I remember from the Sundance collab, you can go to the American Film Market and you want to get a sales agent. So that's going to be part of the process, is getting a sales agent attached, paying upfront costs for the marketing materials that they need, and letting them do their work in selling the film. But it's going to be the difference between, for example, my friend he made a movie and leased that film on Netflix for 15 years versus selling the movie. So he still owns the movie and owns the rights to it and is making a sequel, which he has the right to do because it wasn't taken from him from selling the movie. Once you sell the movie, it's in someone else's hands. Someone else owns all of it.
I
But
remember, sorry, go ahead.
but when you lease it, you're the owner. You're still the owner of the movie, and people are paying you rent to put your movie up on their platform.
That's something that Simon, I remember Simon going into detail about the guy who had his film for rent on Amazon, I think it was the example. And then he ended up later selling it and he made less when he sold it.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something else out there that Miranda Bailey, a friend of mine, she runs Cold Iron Pictures. They do film arcade and they have different brackets of helping young emerging filmmakers. And what they do is like you pay them $5,000 and they do marketing, but they also secure, I believe that they secure theaters. So if you're an emerging filmmaker and your goal is to get into the Oscars, then securing theaters is something that you have to do because you have to premiere your film for so long at so many theaters.
Mm.
So there's so many different ways for you to go about marketing and plugging and making your movie.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a beast. But on the positive side of that, I'm glad that there are so many ways to do this. There's not one rough cut edge of the process that everybody has to follow. If we didn't have multiple ways of getting it done, I think we'd run into many more brick walls than are already there.
I want to ask about your thought process on your next projects. And I know you're in pre-production on a feature, your first feature, correct?
Yeah.
So maybe your thought process isn't even on your next projects because this is going to be so consuming for so long. But what are, if any, your thoughts about the next stories you want to tell? And are they contingent on this process that you're about to embark on? And that's where we're going to end this week's episode. If you want to hear Eagle's answer, check out next week's episode where we talk about her next project and a whole host of other things. From both Leah and myself, thanks for listening. Cheers from Hollywood. If you're on the fence about subscribing, know that a portion of all subscription fees go toward the nonprofit Young Storytellers, raising voices one story at a time. We here at Pitch support and stand in solidarity with the members of the WGA and everyone supporting their current fight for fair compensation and their rightful place in the future of film, television, and streaming content production. Head over to WGA.org to find out more and how you can support as well.